A Fox News alert now. If you are just waking up this morning, the man believed to have murdered students at Brown University and a professor at MIT has been found dead inside a storage facility in New Hampshire. But there are still plenty of unanswered questions.
We're still investigating the motive in this case and trying to, because like I said, he was very careful in his communications, and we just don't have any information right now to answer that question. But when we get that information, we will share it.
Retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent Scott Duffy joins me now. Scott, right now, how are investigators piecing together a motive? Specifically, why this suspect killed two teenage students that weren't even born when this guy reportedly attended Brown University, the same university where this shooting took place and where those two individuals died?
Yeah, good morning, Todd. Yeah, same questions as myself and the rest of us watching, but most importantly, investigators are already digging deep. So you have an individual that, from all reports, right, has been at the university 20 to 25 years ago, and then all of a sudden surfaces without us knowing what has brought him back to the university, the connection to the MIT professor, other than both being Portuguese. What is their connections in the past, perhaps being classmates, et cetera. But what took place in these last 20 some odd years that has brought this person back to Brown University and ultimately on the footsteps of this MIT professor's residence?
Okay, guys, welcome to the video. This is Justin Paul. This is the update on the suspected shooter of the Brown University shooting. They claimed 2 lives and injured, several others. He was found dead in a storage unit. They're saying a self-inflicted gun wound, or, these days, man, I'm gonna be honest. These days, it's kind of hard to believe anything that's coming out because you just never know what's going on. They're saying he's suspected of also murdering a MIT professor. It says they attended the same university in Portugal. Him and the MIT professor, they're both Portuguese, and they both, study physics. So I feel like it's a lot more at play than what they're able to tell us to the public. I feel like it's a whole lot more at play, and it was saying that the MIT professor was on the brink of a new discovery. And I don't know how true that is. I'll have to really sit down and deep dive and do my research. But trust me, they are starting to put a lot of stuff together, and of course they don't want to really release too much information to the public. But I'm sure it's a lot deeper. I don't know what those 2 students had to do with it though. I don't know what his whole purpose of that was. And when these people do stuff and then they kill themselves, it kind of puts it at almost a dead end. Especially if they didn't have any type of accomplice or leave any type of memo or anything like that. It just kind of puts the whole investigation at a sort of a standstill, and then they just try to piece it together bit by bit that they can, try to find similarities here and there.
And to have done unspeakable harm. So investigators are definitely digging deep to see what was that trigger, what took place that caused him to come here and do unspeakable acts.
You saw in the full screen that we just showed, he lived in Miami, Florida prior to all this. He also planned this pretty extensively, from the storage unit up in New Hampshire to that rental car with Florida plates that he covered up then with Maine plates. That level of preparation, albeit not perfect because obviously they found him, but that level of preparation, what does it tell you about his state of mind?
Yeah. Regardless of what was going through his mind, perhaps some sort of mental health component, but he knew exactly what he was doing. The fact that we are seeing pieces of evidence that are going back months in planning, all this takes a lot to be able to have these communications where he is perhaps changing SIM cards, using different apps to throw off authorities. So he was already thinking ahead of, I'm going to try to stay one step ahead of authorities and do what I do. I'm not quite sure if he was done. It just seemed like this was over a period of 6 days, finding him, with Sun or Saturday going to Brown University, and then just a few days later to the MIT professor, and then being able to continue to escape authorities and wind up where he was found in a storage unit in New Hampshire.
Interesting point there. You don't think he was done, but yet he
found in a storage unit.
I mean, look at the map of what happened. The shooting happened, of course, in Providence, Rhode Island. The MIT professor was shot in Brookline, Massachusetts, and the suspect was found in Salem, New Hampshire. So, he was on the move. He was definitely on the move. Again, we'll just have to wait and see, what information they release to us. If of course, because they're gonna come through. If they're gonna go through all of his devices and any type of accounts that he may have had. If he had encrypted stuff, try to get it unencrypted, and really deep dive into this person and see exactly what they was looking like, what he was looking to do, or why these things are somehow all connected. Because I mean, this whole thing spanned over 3 different states.
New Hampshire.
Interesting point there. You don't think he was done, but yet he killed himself apparently when authorities started moving in. Just quickly, how do you square that circle, Scott?
Yeah, so it's a tremendous amount of planning. And so the Brown University, even though he had gone there, what was his target? Who was his target, as opposed to just going to that very campus, that very building that he was at? And then what happened with him and this MIT professor, whether it be years ago or did something recently take place that caused him to want to commit these acts? So I believe something was going through his mind, perhaps over the years, but typically you can only go back 3 to 6 months and you should be able to find what was that trigger that started him on this path. It just seemed that this was an anomaly, an exception to your typical active shooter going into a location to do the most harm in the shortest period of time. And then ultimately, they are typically met either with law enforcement being able to stop that threat, or somebody taking their own life. Yes, he took his own life, but it was some point afterwards.
Sure. The manhunt is over. The quest for answers just beginning. Scott.
Yeah, it's definitely deeper than what we know.
A picture is starting to emerge tonight. And we are continuing to try to put the pieces together here. And this just in, sources now tell me Claudio Neves Valente may have visited a shooting range in New Hampshire before carrying out these attacks. That's because investigators found a receipt to that range, one of the clues investigators are following tonight. Now, authorities say he had been at a hotel in Boston since last month, renting a car, but swapping the plates, likely to avoid detection. They also say he was spotted by a custodian at Brown University on November 28th. That was in a bathroom right near room 166, the room where the shooting took place. And again, the custodian says he saw him on December 1st.
So you see this guy, I mean, maybe that won't raise a flag, but you're kind of like, now that he recalls, like, this guy was doing some recon. He was doing some recon. He was gathering as much intel, maybe even going over the path or walking path he was gonna take. Definitely very, very calculated. because he eluded law enforcement until, you know, he was actually found deceased. You know, of course they was closing in on him because, you know, they was going to use all the resources they had in order to close in on him. But I feel like he was doing recon. You go on the 28th and you come back on the 1st, and then you know, you gathering as much intel, you looking around, seeing if there's cameras and stuff like that. Maybe even watching people coming in and out of that, you know, building and stuff like that. Um, just doing a lot of recon. That's what it seems.
Now, investigators have traced his last known address to Florida, here to this home. Specifically, it's a residential area about 10 miles north of Miami. And a neighbor remembers seeing Neves Valente in the neighborhood, but he didn't recall any problems.
I can't remember seeing him at night, but during the day, I seen him out there in his yard, just at his house, doing home stuff. I mean, just being at home, getting in his car, going out. I mean, like I said, I really had no interaction with him at all, but definitely that's our guy there.
And that neighbor tells us that Neves Valente rented that house there near Miami. Now, the New York Times is also reporting Neves Valente was estranged from his family in Portugal, cutting all ties back home in Portugal. A former classmate told the Times he was, quote, brilliant, but also unhappy and angry. Now, this investigation is still very active. Authorities will be talking to anyone who knew the suspect, looking for any digital footprint to try to determine how he got those guns. We also will keep digging. Maria?
A picture.
Yeah, so it's another one of those cases where, you know, we're going to have to get the information bit by bit. Try to, you know, do, of course, our own research and stuff like that. Of course, this is going to be a very, very popular topic just because of the whole mystery behind everything. And like I said, I feel like it's a lot more at play than what's on the surface of this one. So we're going to definitely stay tuned into what news is being released. You know, they're going to release it strategically because, you know, they have to make sure they have all their ducks in a row, and they have to know what they're talking about too. So, you know, we'll keep everyone updated. No worries about that. If you like my content, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. This is Justin Paul. Peace.